I've got the sunroof open, all the sides closed and the back open, so you can have a bit of a listen as to whether the sound of the motors is intrusive to you. And I suspect many of you are going to be looking at this boat and possibly weighing it up against the new 340, which has got the walk-arounds. So hopefully what we discover on this drive helps you with your decision making, because they are a different layout. Things like accessing the midship cleats is harder on this boat. However, for the length, we've got a beautiful enclosed cabin, and so if you're in an environment that doesn't lend itself towards warm weather all the time, this is very nice. So you be the judge, and let's just go for a drive and see what we can learn together. I've got trim tabs, as I said, twin 225s, got a full tank of fuel, 2 of us on board. Other than that, it's a pretty light boat because it is a brand new boat, so it hasn't been loaded up with equipment. I'm also in a little bit of a rush because I've got a plane to catch. I've got to go to Singapore, and we are in beautiful Palma, Mallorca. We've got some offshore wind blowing at about 15 knots when it touches down off the hills, 20 at times, but it is a largely flat sea today because of that offshore breeze. So just going to accelerate, engine trim down, and let's just go through the numbers. Okay, from 3,400 to 3,700, I'm just doing a slow acceleration because I did notice at about 3.7 yesterday when I came out for a little test on this boat, if you accelerate too quickly, there was a little bit of cavitation with these particular motors. That could just be the engine height installation. I do not know the answer to that. I'm doing a little bit of trim for the wind. There we go. That's why I like these joystick trim tab systems on these boats. Okay. And just cruising along at 26 knots there. Hopefully you can see through this camera, we do have some wind chop. So this thing is comfortable, smooth, chopping it up like I would expect an adventure hull to do. She does like a little bit of trim tab to get your angles right, depending on your angle of attack. And we're just going to take this line from here, downwind, and accelerate pretty soon. But before I do that, we'll just go through a couple little turns. So when you do heel the boat over from a standing position, you've got great viz out on both sides. You do want to pay attention to the roof dropping down. So if you're a taller guy or girl, you may need to just lower your viz, because this roof, particularly if you've got it closed, even with it open, you're not going to really see through it. So just pay attention to that if you're doing any sporty turns. I might actually close this roof now. I had it open just for the sun. And then we're going to go down swell or downwind. We'll do that at full speed because I think it's going to flap a lot if I've got it open, and I just want to match the drone shots. Okay, well, clear, clear, clear. Let's accelerate. So engine noise is not intrusive. So it's obviously, if you have the back door closed, it's going to be even better. 4,800 RPM. 34 knots SOG. I'm seeing a fuel rate of 107 litres an hour. 4,600. I got more to play with. Let's go. Okay, foot to the floor, consuming about 134 litres per hour, seeing 5,600, 5,700 RPM. Skipping along the waves, 41 knots and a half. Maybe we get a little bit more speed out of that. There's 5.9, 145 litres consumption. Skipping along at a really comfortable 42 and a half. You could sustain this. Obviously, don't go doing that all the time because you'll suck up a lot of juice. But if you just back it off at a fast cruise, downwind, we're still doing 37 knot SOG at 5,200 RPM and consuming 112 litres an hour. Let's bank back into the wind. We'll go cross swell for a little bit, maintaining 36 knots. And now we're out in the chop here, and we'll actually go across the waves for a little bit. These ones are bordering half a foot to a foot worth of chop, and just taking that on our beam now. These hulls are great for these sorts of conditions because you can just sustain these higher average speeds. I got 4,900 RPM. I'm consuming 86 litres an hour, and I'm getting a speed return of 34 knots. You do want to drive actively when you're maneuvering an adventure hull. Because we're a lighter boat, we're not using our weight and mass to bash through the waves, so you kind of want to use the design wherever possible. So if you see some big lumpy waves, just adjust the angle of attack so you get the cutting edge of the bow into the waves and you slice them up a little bit more. So let's drop the tabs and go into the waves. And I'm going to go straight into that chop. And another little trick with these faster boats where you can sustain these higher average speeds, if you're, say, on an island or in a harbour and you've got wind chop on one side and you're in the lee on the other, sometimes you can just calculate your VMG, velocity made good, or your distance, and you could actually just speed up to the leeward side of the hill, harbour, whatever, wherever it's calm and protected, and you might actually find that by taking a bit of a roundabout route, I hope this makes sense the way I'm describing it, you get there in the most comfortable manner. So you don't have to be bashing out in the middle of the harbour all the way, because you've got speed as your friend. You can go boom, 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 instead of going boom like that and bashing it in the waves. So for example, in this situation, I might just cut myself up into the waves, get out of the wind, and then rip along the shore in the protected part and just have a more fun and enjoyable ride. But I'm just lowering the bow to max trim tabs down. You don't have a gauge, so you've got to do this by feel. And this hull, you can feel the center of gravity is a little bit higher compared to the GTO because we've got all this glass. So she does have a tendency sometimes to want to lean a little bit more compared to the GTO. Therefore, you're going to be a little bit more active, or you will need to be a little bit more active in your driving and trimming of the vessel to cater to that. But other than that, we're just cruising in 4,000 RPM to 4,100, getting a speed return of 26 knots, burning 75 litres an hour. We're on a twin rig, twin 225s. That's perfectly acceptable. And I really don't see necessity to go much slower. Let's back it off just for the purpose of the exercise. You know, in proper white caps, as you may or may not be able to see through camera one, this is not an uncomfortable ride whatsoever. And I haven't managed to get any large spray up on the windscreen. You can do that, so don't hold me to that. If you go and punch this boat into a big stand-up wave, you're going to take water over the bow and you're going to get waves on the windscreen. But if you just drive this thing actively, if you pick your lines, you can turn it into a very, very comfortable ride. And even at these lower speeds now, say, let's just 22 knots, 4,300 RPM, you know, your fuel flows at 74, around about 74 litres for both motors. Yeah, it's quite healthy for the return on speed that we are getting. So what we'll do, we'll just come back in here. I may not be able to support this next piece of the video with drone footage because the seagulls are really aggressive here. So I'm worried that they're going to take my drone. And we'll come off the plane in this protected water, and we'll just do a quick little bit of transverse thrust to simulate some parking situations. Now this is where you are going to need to have a think about if you are considering the 340 compared to the 320 GTC. how your marina setup at home or where you keep the boat is, because some of you are going to see more value in direct access to the side decks, and some of you are going to want this extra volume or this considerable volume that we get in the middle of the cabin and not worry about that. You can reach the side cleats by just popping the window, so it's perfectly accessible. And if you're doing Mediterranean style mooring, going fore and aft may all be what you need. So moving forward from leaving the wheel and going forward through this door is perfectly capable, but just bear in mind that distance with this big thick door isn't the same width. When you look at the door, it's actually a kind of a reduced thickness. So look, if you've got a bit of a beer gut, just consider that. You may or may not be able to get through that comfortably. So that's where you may want to look at the bigger opening doors on the 340 as opposed to this door, which could be a drama for you. If you are just doing the fore and aft med mooring, provided you manage your guests, you can have a clear access out to the back of the boat. You can just seat people here, 2 people there, and 3 on the back seat, and you can get straight out to that aft cleat. Probably the port aft cleat is the easiest, and moving to the bow, it is not a problem whatsoever. However, if you've got a guest here, this person is going to be kind of stuck here unless they're skinny enough to make their way through there. So that's just something to consider if you are, active boaters and your navigator always wants to be getting up and assisting with the docking. Well, that's not the best seat for them to be. Obviously, they got that seat instead. So, if you're just boating with 2 of you, they may choose that seat. But if you're boating with a whole family, put the active participant in that seat, not that seat, because this is going to be a bit of a drama if they're trying to get up and help you with the lines and you're like, I need to do something. So just factor that in. Let's just play with the transverse thrust. We've blown the fuse on the bow thruster, so we can't use it, but they're perfectly acceptable. I've used them many, many times on all of these Saxdors. These are lightish boats, so you don't need an overly powerful bow thruster to get a response. Obviously the wind will pick it up a little bit quicker than a heavy boat, but there for the motors, and the bow thruster will also respond. That's easy, guys. Your visibility to the bow, your visibility to the aft cleat. I can see the motors as well. I like it when I've got clear vis on the top of the motors, so I can see whether I've turned them, or basically whether they're on the center line. Because sometimes with big back seats you cannot see that, and you just have to count the turns or use a rudder angle indicator if you have access to one. Yeah, guys, pretty straightforward. Yeah, lots of protection. I think that's definitely our takeaway for the size of boat that this is. I wonder if that hatch switch would be better on that side. I guess this is allowing anyone who's on board to operate the roof, so maybe that's what they're thinking there. Consider the center position of the wheel and throttle. It's comfortable, it's racy. Oh, that's just a 1-button push. Okay, I didn't need to hold my finger on that. Consider whether that door is a positive or a negative for you, and consider whether you need access to these midship cleats and whether these windows are accessible. They are big windows. You can kind of totally get out of them, but if that's too hard for you at your setup at home, then consider the 340. It's walk around. That's the solution. Or the GTO, obviously, which is the open style. Yeah, guys, bit of fun. Hope that was useful. Do jump in the comments. Let me know what boat you're comparing this with. I will then endeavor to go and film it and post it to the channel if enough of you are talking about it, so we can keep making this content that is designed to help you with your boat life, not mine. So I'll pop up another video on the screen right now, and then go ahead and look at that and do some homework. Hopefully it helps you. Subscribe, like, share with your mates. And I'm on Minnect if you want to talk to me directly and ask me questions about this boat versus others. That's the place to do it. If you're sending me DMs and messages on social media, don't expect a response. I get hundreds of messages. I literally don't see them all. So if you want to communicate and get quick answers, that's where to do it. Love you lots. See you next time.